Captain Elias Drake stepped off the shuttle, his boots making soft thuds against the metal platform of the outpost. The air was crisp and smelled faintly of ozone, a strange mix of minerals and electricity that reminded him of old Earth storms. The outpost itself was small, yet imposing, built on a cliff overlooking a vast expanse of glowing blue terrain that stretched endlessly in all directions. The strange landscape shimmered under the light of two suns, casting long, jagged shadows across the uneven ground. Elias couldn't help but feel the weight of history pressing down on him. He was humanity's first official representative on this planet, and everything he did would be remembered. As he approached the main command center, he noticed the human crew members already at work. They were a mix of engineers, scientists, and military personnel, all wearing the standard Earth-issued suits designed for the planet's low-oxygen environment. They looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and relief. New leadership always brought hope. Elias gave them a nod, keeping his expression professional, though inside, a mix of excitement and nervousness churned. This was not just another assignment. He was stepping into a world that humanity barely understood. Inside the command center, the atmosphere was tense but orderly. Screens displayed readings of atmospheric conditions, alien life forms, and strange energy readings emanating from the nearby mountains. Elias could see why scientists were fascinated. The world was alive in ways Earth could not have prepared them for. He took a deep breath and waited for the briefing. Colonel Mara Simons, his superior, entered the room with her usual brisk confidence. "Captain Drake," she said, her tone serious. "Your assignment here will be unique. You are to spend a night with the Xiphorian Queen." Elias blinked. "The Queen? I didn't expect that. Is that diplomatic or security-related?" His voice betrayed his surprise. Though he tried to remain composed, Colonel Simons sighed, sensing his hesitation. "It's diplomatic. The Xiphorians have a complex culture, Captain. Their queen does not operate like a human monarch. She is both a leader and a judge. The night is ceremonial. It's meant to test our intentions and the integrity of those who represent humanity. Do not misinterpret it. Your actions tonight could define the relationship between our species and theirs." Elias swallowed hard. He had read about the Xiphorians, a species of highly intelligent beings with a hierarchical society ruled by a queen. Their history with other civilizations was one of negotiation and cautious trust, not conquest. They were territorial and protective of their knowledge, but they valued logic, courage, and creativity. Elias understood, at least in theory, that his first night on the planet would be less about comfort and more about proving himself. The briefing continued, detailing the history of the Xiphorian Queen, their rituals, and the significance of the ceremonial night. The Queen's chamber was described as a bioluminescent palace suspended over a glowing energy lake. It was a place where the Xiphorians tested visitors' intellect, morality, and ability to communicate across species. Elias noted that the night was a psychological and diplomatic trial, not a simple meeting. As he prepared, he felt a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. On one hand, he was humanity's representative, chosen for his ability to handle complex situations. On the other hand, he was alone in a chamber with a species he barely understood, and the stakes were high. One misstep could ignite mistrust, or worse, end negotiations before they even began. He suited up in the protective gear designed for the planet, ensuring that the sensors on his suit were active. It wasn't just a matter of physical safety. The Xiphorian Queen had the ability to test humans in ways that could be mentally and emotionally challenging. Elias reminded himself that he had trained for extreme situations, both physical and psychological. This, he thought, would be no different, just another test, another mission. The walk to the Queen's palace was unlike anything Elias had experienced. The path twisted along the cliffs, illuminated by bioluminescent plants that reacted to his presence. Strange creatures scuttled across the terrain below, their movements almost rhythmic, as if the planet itself were alive and aware of him. Every step brought a mixture of awe and unease. He realized that to impress the queen, he would need to be calm, observant, and adaptable. Any hint of fear could be interpreted as weakness. Finally, he reached the entrance to the palace. The structure was magnificent, its walls pulsing with energy that seemed to respond to his approach. The air inside shimmered with a soft glow, and the sense of intelligence, of awareness, was overwhelming. Elias stepped forward, reminding himself to breathe, to focus. He was here to learn, to observe, and to prove humanity's worth. Inside, the chamber was larger than he had imagined, stretching into heights that defied comprehension. Organic structures intertwined with crystalline formations, creating a space that was alive and yet ordered with perfect symmetry. He could feel the presence of the queen before he saw her, a subtle pressure in his mind, a quiet intelligence observing him. Elias moved forward slowly, his mind alert, reading every detail, every nuance. Then she appeared. Queen Lyris, the Xiphorian queen, stood in the center of the chamber. She was taller than any human, her form both elegant and intimidating. Her skin shimmered with patterns that shifted like liquid light, and her eyes, larger than human eyes, glowed softly, with intelligence. She did not speak, but Elias felt her presence, her mind brushing against his in a way that was both challenging and fascinating. He realized immediately that the queen's method of communication was telepathic, a direct sharing of thoughts and impressions. Elias bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "Queen Lyris," he said aloud, though he knew she could hear his thoughts. "I am Captain Elias Drake, representing humanity. I am honored to be here." A wave of understanding and observation washed over him in response. The queen was analyzing him, probing for intent, curiosity, and integrity. Elias focused, opening his mind as instructed during training, allowing himself to understand her presence without fear. This was not a battle. It was a dialogue of sorts, a test of empathy and intelligence. The night began with a series of challenges, subtle and intricate. The queen presented scenarios through visions, civilizations in crisis, moral dilemmas, and strategic problems. Elias was expected to navigate these scenarios, demonstrating reasoning, creativity, and diplomacy. Each decision he made was felt by the queen. Each choice weighed against her standards of judgment. Hours passed. Elias faced visions of conflicts between species, threats to resources, and ethical dilemmas that required him to balance logic with morality. He solved puzzles that demanded innovation, predicted outcomes, and sometimes admitted when he did not know the answer. In every moment, he treated the visions not as tricks, but as opportunities to show humanity's strengths, adaptability, cooperation, and resilience. By the midpoint of the night, Elias began to understand more about the Xiphorians and their queen. Lyris did not merely test for intelligence. She measured the depth of character. She assessed patience, compassion, and the ability to think beyond oneself. Elias realized that this was a mirror of humanity, a reflection of their potential for greatness when guided by wisdom rather than fear. He began to appreciate the enormity of the responsibility he carried, not just for his own survival, but for the future of interspecies relations. As the night deepened, Elias found himself exhausted but exhilarated. The visions grew more complex, the challenges more subtle. Yet with every choice, he felt a connection growing between himself and the queen, a mutual recognition of intelligence and potential. He understood that the trial was not merely a test of endurance, but an opportunity for mutual understanding, a bridge between human and Xiphorian cultures. Finally, as the first hints of the planet's twin suns crept over the horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the chamber, Elias felt a sense of accomplishment. He had navigated the trials, responded with integrity, and proven his capability. The queen observed him silently, and Elias could sense a shift in her presence, a recognition, a quiet approval. When the night ended, Elias bowed deeply. "Thank you, Queen Lyris, for this opportunity," he said aloud. "I hope humanity can honor the trust you have shown." The queen's response was subtle but unmistakable. A gentle wave of energy pulsed through the chamber, a gesture of acknowledgement and acceptance. Elias knew that the night had been a success. He had passed the first test of interspecies diplomacy, demonstrating that humanity could meet the expectations of one of the galaxy's most intelligent species. As he left the chamber and returned to his quarters, Elias felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The night had challenged him in ways he had never imagined, but it had also shown the potential for partnership and understanding. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a representative, a bridge, and a symbol of humanity's capabilities. The planet outside shimmered in the early light, alive with possibilities. Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The trials of the night had tested him, but they had also opened a door to a future filled with promise, adventure, and the chance to prove humanity's worth on a galactic stage. And as he settled into his quarters, he allowed himself a small, quiet smile, knowing that he had taken the first step in a journey that would define not just his life, but the future of humanity itself. The morning sunlight spilled over the cliffs of the alien planet, painting the outpost in soft gold and blue hues. Captain Elias Drake emerged from his quarters, still feeling the lingering presence of Queen Lyris's chamber. The night had been long, challenging, and unlike anything he had ever experienced, but it had also been illuminating. He had learned that understanding the Xiphorians required patience, observation, and respect. And he felt both humbled and determined. Elias made his way to the command center, where Colonel Simons was already reviewing reports from the outpost scanners. The humans were busy cataloging the strange flora and fauna, their excitement evident as they discussed patterns and energy readings. Elias nodded politely to them, but his mind was elsewhere, thinking about the Queen, the visions, and the unspoken lessons embedded within her tests. "Good morning, Captain," Colonel Simons said without looking up. "You did well last night." The Queen's response was favorable. "But don't get comfortable. There's more work ahead." Elias straightened. "I understand, ma'am. I know the night was just the beginning." Simons finally looked up, her sharp eyes studying him. "Correct. The Queen's ceremony is not merely ceremonial, it's a gateway to trust. And trust here is fragile. There's a faction among the Xiphorians that does not welcome humans. They see our presence as an intrusion, a threat to their traditions. You need to prove that humanity can be wise and reliable. The first trial was private. The next trial will be public, and it will test your ability to act under pressure, to negotiate, and to think creatively." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The thought of a public challenge worried him. He had handled the Queen's visions, but now he would face scrutiny, not just from her, but from observers whose motives he might never fully understand. Yet he also felt a spark of excitement. This was the kind of challenge he had trained for. A test not just of skill, but of human ingenuity. By mid-morning, Elias was escorted to the palace once more. The chamber was different in daylight, the bioluminescent structures glowing softly, highlighting the crystalline formations that twisted upward like towers. The energy lake reflected the twin suns above, casting shimmering patterns that danced across the walls. The palace seemed alive, breathing in harmony with the planet itself. Elias couldn't help but marvel at the beauty, even as he prepared for the next phase of the trial. Queen Lyris awaited him in the center, her form majestic and commanding. She did not speak aloud, but her presence reached into his mind immediately. This time, the test was more intricate. She projected a series of interconnected visions that involved multiple civilizations, each with their own conflicts and interests. Elias was to navigate these challenges while ensuring the well-being of all parties involved. Failure would not be punished with harm, but it would signal weakness, potentially endangering humanity's reputation. The first scenario appeared as a swirling projection above the energy lake. A group of alien miners was trapped in a cavern, and human settlers had arrived nearby to expand operations. Elias could see the tension in the scene, the fear of the miners, and the suspicion of the humans. Decisions had to be made quickly. He assessed the resources available, considered the risks, and formulated a plan that involved minimal interference while ensuring the miners' safety. As he guided the scenario to a successful resolution, Elias noticed subtle shifts in the Queen's perception. He could feel her analysis of his choices, weighing not only efficiency but morality and foresight. Each correct decision earned subtle recognition, a pulse of energy that suggested approval. Yet she remained aloof, reminding him that this was a test of consistency, not just a single victory. The next scenario was more challenging. It involved a dispute between two Xiphorian factions, one of which had historically opposed contact with humans. They were on the verge of conflict over resource allocation, and Elias was expected to mediate. He realized that brute logic would not work here. He had to appeal to cultural understanding and empathy. Drawing from what he had learned the previous night, he approached the visions with patience, carefully analyzing the motivations of each group. He proposed solutions that balanced the interests of both sides, demonstrating compromise and fairness. It was a delicate negotiation, and at one point, a faction seemed unwilling to cooperate. Elias paused, thinking quickly, and suggested a solution that involved shared monitoring and oversight, a neutral approach that allowed both parties to retain dignity. The tension in the vision eased, and he sensed the Queen's acknowledgement. Hours passed, and the challenges continued to grow more complex. Each scenario tested not just his intellect, but his creativity, ethics, and ability to anticipate unintended consequences. He faced situations where the safest choice would have been inaction, yet inaction could have led to disaster. Each decision required balancing risk with principle, a delicate dance that demanded focus and courage. During one particularly intricate challenge, Elias encountered a scenario where human technology malfunctioned in a Xiphorian city. The malfunction threatened to destabilize the energy grid, potentially causing widespread chaos. Elias quickly assessed the situation, analyzing both human and Xiphorian systems. He devised a solution that leveraged Xiphorian energy management techniques, combined with human engineering ingenuity. The crisis was averted, and he felt a quiet surge of pride. This moment reminded him that humanity's strength lay not only in courage but also in adaptability and collaboration. The Queen observed silently, her presence a constant reminder of the stakes. Yet despite the intensity, Elias began to sense an underlying purpose in the trials. Lyris was teaching him, guiding him toward understanding the Xiphorian perspective, while challenging him to showcase the best of humanity. Each scenario was designed not only to test but also to build a bridge between the species. By late afternoon, the scenarios began to converge, forming a single, intricate web of challenges. A rogue faction of Xiphorians appeared, attempting to sabotage the delicate alliances he had fostered in the visions. Elias understood immediately that this was a test of resilience and leadership under pressure. He had to act decisively, using both human strategy and the insights he had gained from observing Xiphorian culture. He orchestrated a plan that involved isolating the rogue faction, negotiating with them, and simultaneously maintaining the alliances he had built. It required quick thinking, precise timing, and trust in his instincts. The energy lake responded to his actions, glowing brighter as the scenarios resolved in success. Elias felt a profound sense of accomplishment, yet he remained vigilant, knowing the Queen's assessment was ongoing. As the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace, Elias realized he had not only passed the trials, but had also begun to understand the essence of the Queen's tests. She valued intelligence, yes, but she valued wisdom, courage, and integrity even more. His ability to think creatively, act ethically, and anticipate consequences had earned recognition, though he knew the final judgment was still to come. Finally, Queen Lyris projected a single image, a peaceful alliance between humans and Xiphorians, standing together against potential threats from the galaxy. Elias felt a wave of approval from her, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement that he had met her standards. It was a quiet triumph, one that carried immense significance for humanity's future on this planet. Elias left the chamber, exhausted but exhilarated. The trials had pushed him to his limits, tested his intellect, and challenged his moral compass. Yet he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had proven that humans could act with intelligence, integrity, and courage, even in situations far beyond their usual experience. The Queen's approval was more than personal, it was a symbol of humanity's potential, a beacon of hope for future interactions between species. Back at the outpost, Elias reflected on the day's events. The humans were busy with their routine tasks, unaware of the intricate mental and ethical challenges he had faced. He realized that true leadership required not just skill but understanding, empathy, and the courage to make difficult decisions. The Queen's tests had been demanding, but they had also prepared him for the complexities of interspecies diplomacy, for the unexpected challenges that lay ahead on this alien world. As night fell once more over the alien landscape, Elias felt a quiet determination settle within him. The day's trials had been grueling, but they had also shown him the strength of humanity. He was more than a representative. He was a bridge, a symbol of possibility. And as he looked toward the glowing horizon, he understood that his journey had only just begun. The alliance between humans and Xiphorians was fragile, yet full of promise. With intelligence, courage, and integrity, he could help shape a future where both species thrived together, exploring the vast mysteries of the galaxy side by side. The night over the alien outpost was quiet, yet Captain Elias Drake could feel a tension in the air. Though the trials with Queen Lyris had gone well, he knew the challenges were far from over. Diplomacy, he realized, was never a finished task. There were forces within the Xiphorian society who did not welcome humans, and Elias understood that any misstep could unravel the fragile trust he had begun to build. He walked along the glowing cliffs, observing the bioluminescent plants that reacted to his presence. The soft hum of energy from the planet below mingled with the distant calls of strange creatures. Every sound reminded him that this world was alive in ways humans barely understood. He was not alone here, and he had to remain vigilant. Back in the command center, reports came in that a small group of Xiphorian extremists had moved closer to the human outpost. They were opposed to human presence, and were testing defenses, trying to gauge how humans would react. Elias knew that this was a real test, far more dangerous than the controlled scenarios with the Queen. It was unpredictable, and any action could escalate into a conflict. Elias gathered his team quickly, briefing them on the situation. "We don't know their exact numbers or intent," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Our goal is not confrontation. We show strength, intelligence, and respect. We respond, but we do not provoke. If we handle this correctly, it could strengthen our position with the Xiphorians." The team nodded, trusting his judgment. Elias felt a surge of responsibility. The lives of his crew, and the future of human-Xiphorian relations, depended on his decisions. He had trained for emergencies, but this was unlike any scenario he had faced on Earth. Here, the stakes were higher, and the consequences would reach beyond the outpost. As the extremists approached, Elias decided to engage them strategically. Instead of showing force, he used human ingenuity. Drones were deployed to monitor movements, but they were programmed to remain hidden, capturing information without provoking fear. He analyzed patterns, anticipating possible tactics, and prepared contingencies. It was a delicate balance, acting decisively while avoiding unnecessary aggression. Suddenly, one of the extremists attempted to infiltrate the perimeter, using advanced camouflage technology. Elias acted quickly, activating a countermeasure that created a holographic decoy, misleading the intruder into a safe containment zone. The rest of the extremists paused, confused by the unexpected display of intelligence. Elias seized the moment, sending a clear message through communication channels. Humans were capable, cautious, and strategic. Meanwhile, the Queen observed from afar, her presence felt through subtle telepathic signals. Elias could sense her awareness, and it spurred him to remain precise, thoughtful, and calm. The extremists, sensing resistance, began to retreat, realizing that humans were not naive and could anticipate their moves. Elias allowed them to withdraw peacefully, ensuring no bloodshed occurred. After the encounter, Elias convened with his team. "This was more than defense," he said. It was a demonstration. The extremists now know that we are competent, but we also respect life and culture. That is how we gain trust. His words were met with nods of understanding. The team had learned the same lesson Elias had. Human ingenuity was not just about technology. It was about thinking, adapting, and leading wisely. Later, he was summoned to the Queen's chamber once more. The palace shimmered under the starlight, its energy lake reflecting patterns of brilliance that seemed almost alive. Queen Lyris awaited him, her presence calm but expectant. Elias knew that this visit would test him not physically but morally. The events with the extremists had demonstrated his strategic skill, but now he would need to show wisdom and leadership in the face of ethical challenges. The Queen projected a new scenario, more intricate than anything before. It involved a potential crisis between humans and Xiphorians over resources critical to both species. The challenge was not about winning or losing, it was about balance, compromise, and foresight. Elias studied the scenario carefully, realizing that any choice carried long-term consequences. He chose to approach the problem collaboratively, suggesting shared management of resources, using both human and Xiphorian technologies to optimize efficiency. The scenario tested his ability to negotiate under pressure, anticipate conflicts, and integrate cultural understanding with practical solutions. Each decision he made was reflected in the Queen's response, subtle yet unmistakable in its acknowledgement. Hours passed as Elias navigated the complex scenario. He dealt with unexpected variables, a sudden Xiphorian environmental hazard, conflicting demands from human engineers, and cultural misunderstandings that threatened to derail the solution. Yet he remained calm, thinking creatively, and adapting quickly. He realized that leadership was not about asserting control. It was about listening, understanding, and finding solutions that respected all parties. As the scenario concluded successfully, Elias felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The Queen's presence shifted subtly, a wave of recognition that acknowledged his skill and judgment. It was clear that he was not just passing tests, he was shaping the way humans would be perceived by the Xiphorians. His ability to act with intelligence, integrity, and empathy had become a beacon of possibility for both species. But the challenges did not end there. Just as Elias began to relax, an alert signaled a more serious threat. A natural disaster, triggered by the planet's unstable energy patterns, threatened the outpost and nearby Xiphorian settlements. Elias knew that this crisis required immediate action. He could not rely solely on human technology, he had to combine human ingenuity with an understanding of Xiphorian knowledge and methods. He coordinated with his team and Xiphorian advisors, analyzing the data and formulating a plan. The energy patterns were unpredictable, but Elias identified a way to stabilize the flow temporarily while minimizing risk to life. He guided human and Xiphorian teams, integrating knowledge and strategy, and ensured that evacuation procedures were clear and effective. The effort required quick thinking, clear communication, and a steady hand, but under Elias's leadership, it succeeded. The aftermath of the disaster revealed a crucial lesson. Humanity's strength was not just in courage or intelligence, but in cooperation. Elias had demonstrated that humans could work with alien species, respect their methods, and still apply creativity and strategy to overcome crises. The Queen's recognition was implicit in the calm, measured way she regarded him after the event, her energy presence resonating approval and trust. Exhausted but determined, Elias returned to his quarters. He reflected on the events of the day and the lessons he had learned. The challenges had tested his intellect, ethics, and leadership, and he had risen to meet them. Yet he knew that the journey was far from over. The galaxy was full of unknown threats and opportunities, and humanity's future among the stars depended on continued vigilance, courage, and wisdom. Elias allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He had proven that humans could navigate complex ethical dilemmas, adapt to unpredictable challenges, and build bridges across species. His trials with the Queen had prepared him not just for ceremonial tests, but for real-life crises that demanded intelligence, courage, and creativity. As the twin moons rose over the alien landscape, Elias gazed out across the cliffs. The energy lake glowed beneath him, a symbol of life, intelligence, and possibility. He understood that every decision he made now would shape the perception of humanity, influencing relationships, alliances, and the future of interstellar cooperation. The Queen's trials were no longer hypothetical, they were a living framework for understanding the potential and responsibility of his species. In that quiet moment, Elias resolved to continue proving humanity's worth. He would demonstrate that humans could act with integrity, think with intelligence, and lead with courage, even in the most alien and unpredictable circumstances. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was ready. The trials had shown him what was possible, and he was determined to ensure that humanity's presence in the galaxy would be one of respect, innovation, and partnership. As he prepared for sleep, Elias felt the weight of responsibility settle on him once more. Yet it was not a burden, it was a challenge. An opportunity to showcase the best of humanity. The night had been long and demanding, but it had also revealed the strength, ingenuity, and potential that lay within him and within his species. And as he closed his eyes, he knew that tomorrow would bring new trials, new opportunities, and the chance to continue proving that humans were capable of greatness, even in the most alien of worlds. The planet's twin suns rose slowly over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the cliffs and illuminating the bioluminescent flora with soft, shifting light. Captain Elias Drake stood at the edge of the outpost, taking a deep breath of the crisp, slightly electric air. The previous nights had tested him in ways he had never imagined. Visions with the Queen, extremist factions, and natural disasters. But he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Today would be the final phase of his trials, and Elias knew it would be both the most challenging and the most rewarding. He was escorted back to the palace, where the energy lake shimmered in the morning light. Queen Lyris awaited him, her presence calm yet commanding. Elias could feel her awareness reaching into his mind, assessing, observing, and anticipating his actions. This final challenge would not be a simulation or a test of intellect alone. It would be a real trial that could determine the future of human-Xiphorian relations. The Queen projected a complex scenario that combined elements of everything Elias had faced before. There was a looming interstellar threat, a distant raider fleet approaching Xiphorian territory. At the same time, there were internal tensions among Xiphorian factions and human outpost personnel, each with their own concerns and mistrust. Elias was tasked with coordinating a response that ensured the safety of both species while maintaining trust, cooperation, and stability. He began by assessing the situation. The raider fleet was fast, technologically advanced, and unpredictable. Conventional defense alone would not suffice. Elias needed to integrate human ingenuity with Xiphorian strategic methods. He called on lessons learned during the previous nights: patience, observation, empathy, and adaptability. Every decision would have consequences, and hesitation could prove catastrophic. Elias coordinated with Xiphorian leaders and human team members simultaneously, using secure communication networks and telepathic links facilitated by the Queen. He shared real-time data, projected outcomes, and possible strategies. It was a delicate dance of leadership, requiring him to anticipate moves, negotiate compromises, and act decisively when necessary. The first challenge arose when one Xiphorian faction, fearing human overreach, began to withdraw support from defensive operations. Elias engaged them carefully, acknowledging their concerns while demonstrating the benefits of cooperation. He proposed shared command and resource management, blending human engineering with Xiphorian energy control. Slowly, the faction agreed, reassured by Elias's balance of respect and strategy. Next, the raider fleet appeared on sensors, moving faster than expected. Elias calculated trajectories, coordinated defensive formations, and suggested tactical maneuvers that leveraged both human and Xiphorian technologies. The humans operated the ships, but the Xiphorians provided insights on energy fields and alien maneuvering techniques. Together, they created a defense far stronger than either species could achieve alone. During the engagement, the raiders attempted to target critical energy nodes. Elias quickly devised a countermeasure, using holographic decoys and synchronized energy pulses to confuse their sensors. The fleet was forced to retreat, unable to penetrate the combined human-Xiphorian defenses. Elias realized that intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation were far more powerful than raw force. But the challenge was not yet complete. A hidden faction within the raider group attempted a stealth attack on the outpost itself, bypassing the main defenses. Elias anticipated this by analyzing energy fluctuations and unusual patterns in the sensors. Acting swiftly, he deployed rapid response teams and coordinated with Xiphorian scouts to intercept the intruders. The stealth attack was neutralized without casualties, demonstrating his foresight and ability to manage multiple crises simultaneously. As the immediate threat subsided, Elias turned his attention to rebuilding trust among both species. Misunderstandings and fear had arisen during the chaos, and he knew that resolving them was as important as defeating the raiders. He facilitated discussions, clarified intentions, and proposed long-term solutions for resource sharing, communication, and cooperative governance. His actions reinforced humanity's role as a reliable partner, capable of leadership, diplomacy, and ethical decision-making. The Queen observed silently throughout the ordeal, her presence guiding Elias, but never imposing. He could feel her assessment shifting subtly, her recognition of his growth and understanding evident in the calm energy that surrounded him. Elias realized that this final challenge was not simply about tactical success. It was about embodying the qualities the Xiphorians valued most: intelligence, courage, integrity, and the ability to unite diverse groups under a common purpose. Hours passed as Elias oversaw the resolution of conflicts, the stabilization of defenses, and the establishment of cooperative agreements. By late afternoon, the planet's landscape glowed with the warm light of the twin suns, and the energy lake reflected a sense of calm and harmony. The raider threat had been neutralized, trust between factions was restored, and the outpost stood stronger than ever. Elias felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not pride in victory, but satisfaction in demonstrating what humanity could achieve. Finally, Queen Lyris projected an image of Elias standing at the center of a thriving alliance. Humans and Xiphorians working together, sharing knowledge, technology, and culture. He could feel her acknowledgement, a silent but unmistakable approval. This moment was the culmination of all he had learned and all he had done. The trials had tested his intellect, his morality, and his leadership, and he had proven himself worthy in the eyes of the Queen. Elias knelt briefly in respect. "Thank you, Queen Lyris," he said aloud, though he knew she could hear his thoughts as well. "For the trials, for your guidance, and for trusting humanity. We will honor this opportunity and work to build a future together." A subtle pulse of energy washed over him, a signal of recognition and acceptance. Elias understood that this was not the end of the journey, but a beginning. The Queen's approval symbolized a new era of cooperation, a bridge between species that would allow both humans and Xiphorians to explore the galaxy with shared strength and understanding. As he left the palace, Elias reflected on the lessons of the past days. The challenges had been immense, but they had also revealed the potential within humanity: intelligence, creativity, courage, and the ability to work together for a common purpose. He knew that humans were capable of greatness, not through dominance, but through wisdom, cooperation, and ethical leadership. Back at the outpost, the crew welcomed him with a mixture of relief and admiration. They had seen the results of his decisions, the successful coordination of resources, and the peaceful resolution of potential conflicts. Elias shared his insights, emphasizing the importance of understanding Xiphorian culture, respecting their values, and using human ingenuity to complement, not replace, their methods. Over the following days, the alliance began to solidify. Humans and Xiphorians worked side by side, conducting joint research, sharing technology, and establishing new protocols for interspecies cooperation. The extremists who had opposed humans gradually accepted the new order, recognizing that humanity could be both strong and trustworthy. Elias's leadership had transformed suspicion into respect, fear into cooperation. In the evenings, Elias often returned to the palace to speak with Queen Lyris. Their discussions were no longer trials but exchanges of ideas, strategies, and visions for the future. He began to understand not only the Queen's intelligence but her values, fairness, foresight, and the importance of nurturing potential. Through these conversations, Elias felt a growing bond of trust, a connection that transcended species and demonstrated the power of mutual understanding. Months passed, and the outpost became a model for interstellar cooperation. Other human colonies looked to it as an example of how diplomacy, intelligence, and ethical leadership could achieve what brute force could not. The story of Captain Elias Drake and Queen Lyris spread, inspiring humans to embrace curiosity, courage, and collaboration when facing the unknown. Elias himself reflected often on the journey. The trials had been difficult, but they had prepared him for leadership in ways he could never have imagined. He realized that the essence of humanity's strength lay not just in technological ability, but in the capacity to understand, adapt, and lead with integrity. In the face of alien intelligence, unknown dangers, and complex moral challenges, humans could shine. As the twin suns set once more, casting long shadows across the glowing cliffs, Elias stood at the edge of the outpost, looking out over the planet. The energy lake shimmered, reflecting the promise of a future filled with exploration, cooperation, and shared knowledge. He knew that humanity had proven its worth, not through conquest, but through wisdom, courage, and the ability to unite with others for a greater purpose. And in that moment, Captain Elias Drake understood the true meaning of the Queen's trials. They had tested him, yes, but they had also revealed the path forward. A future where humans and Xiphorians could thrive together, exploring the vast mysteries of the galaxy side by side. He smiled quietly, knowing that this was only the beginning of humanity's journey among the stars, and that with intelligence, courage, and integrity, there was no limit to what they could achieve.